They underestimated you. They thought they knew your limits, your breaking point. To them, you were predictable, fragile, and easily forgotten. But what they didn't see, what they couldn't possibly comprehend, was the ember deep inside you, quietly waiting for its moment to ignite. Life isn't kind to those who carry unseen potential. It disguises opportunities as obstacles, wraps gifts in layers of pain, and demands sacrifices from the very people who seem least equipped to give them. That's where you were, on the edge, doubting your worth, wondering if the whispers of inadequacy from others were truths you had to live with. But every insult, every dismissal, every time they overlooked you, they were tossing fuel onto that ember. They didn't know it, but they were preparing the fire that would consume their arrogance. They thought they had extinguished you, but all they did was ensure you'd burn brighter. The flame was always yours to claim. Survival isn't enough. There comes a moment when simply enduring isn't the victory, it's the trap. Survival can make you complacent, convincing you that as long as you're still breathing, you're winning. But deep down you knew better. Breathing isn't living, existing isn't thriving, and enduring isn't conquering. You realized this when you stopped merely existing in their shadow and started crafting the tools to break free from it. It wasn't easy to see at first. The pain felt overwhelming, random, even cruel. But as time passed, something began to shift. You started to notice the patterns. The ridicule you faced wasn't a reflection of your inadequacy. It was their fear disguised as mockery. The credit they stole wasn't because they deserved it. It was because they knew they couldn't match your brilliance on their own. Every dismissal, every doubt, every slight, they weren't just attacks. They were lessons, shaping you into something they would eventually regret underestimating. You began to understand that the pain wasn't random. It was a process. Every wound was a hammer strike. Every setback was a blast of heat. And every insult was fuel for the fire. You were being tempered, shaped like steel in a forge. What they intended to destroy you was, in fact, refining you. Every time they laughed at your dreams, every time they belittled your efforts or dismissed your potential, they sharpened your resolve. They turned you into something they wouldn't recognize until it was too late. You didn't just endure the fire, they handed you the tools to control it. With every cruel word, you built the furnace hotter, stronger, and more relentless. They thought they were breaking you, but all they were doing was building the foundation of something indestructible. But this wasn't just about them. No, it went deeper than that. This wasn't about revenge or proving them wrong. It was about proving something to yourself. You had to strip away the lies they told you, the doubts they planted in your mind, the belief that their validation was the ultimate goal. You had to realize that you were never their reflection, their pawn, or their failure. You were always more than their limited view of you, more than the role they cast you in, and more than the walls they tried to confine you within. It was in those quiet moments of reflection, in the stillness of your resolve, that you discovered the truth. You weren't building the furnace to match their expectations. You were building it to destroy them. Not them as individuals, but them as doubts, as fears, as obstacles. The furnace wasn't a response to their actions. It was your declaration of independence from their influence. And as the furnace grew, As its flames roared higher, it became clear that this wasn't about rising above them. It wasn't about surpassing their achievements or outshining their efforts. It was about something far more powerful. It was about annihilating every doubt they ever had about you. It was about erasing every assumption, every misconception, every limitation they tried to impose on you. Because when you built that furnace, you weren't just preparing to rise. You were preparing to incinerate the very foundation of their confidence. When the moment came, it was quiet at first. No explosions, no dramatic confrontations, just a shift, a subtle crack in the foundation of everything they thought they controlled. They didn't see it at first because they never bothered to look closely. They never truly saw you, not for who you were becoming. They saw what they needed to see to maintain their grip. But that vision had never accounted for your resilience, your evolution. But you felt it. You could sense the exact moment when everything they had built, everything they had relied upon, began to unravel. You felt the weight of it in your bones, the change vibrating through you, knowing that the balance of power was tipping. For so long, they had controlled the narrative, your narrative. They dictated the terms, the expectations, and the limits. But now, that script was yours to rewrite. It started small. At first, just a glance in a room, the way you walked in, how your presence demanded attention without even trying. The air seemed to thicken when you entered. You spoke, and your words carried weight. No longer meek or uncertain, you articulated your thoughts with a confidence they couldn't ignore. You weren't just speaking, you were commanding. You weren't asking for permission anymore, nor were you waiting for validation. You were claiming what was always rightfully yours. The room listened. The people responded, and their whispers shifted from disbelief to fear. They couldn't look away. They couldn't stop what was happening. The plans they had once easily dismissed were now unstoppable forces, carving their own path. The walls they had built to keep you in line, the barriers they had erected to block your progress, were now crumbling. They watched in disbelief as you turned their own words, their own tactics, back on them. What they once tried to destroy was now rising, unstoppable. Your resolve had transformed into action, and their manipulations no longer had a foothold. At first, they tried to dismiss it. They tried to hold on to their smirks, their sneers, their superiority. But the cracks deepened. The smirks faltered. Their eyes no longer held the same mocking glint. They could feel it now. Your power, your confidence. It was like a storm on the horizon, something they couldn't control or predict. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, as they scrambled to regain their grip, to remind you of your place, as if you ever had one in their eyes to begin with. But the illusion was shattered. The illusion that they were in control, that they held the power, that you were insignificant. That was the lie they told themselves. And now, in front of them, you were living proof of its fragility. You were never weak. You were just waiting. You were never small. You were simply biding your time. They thought you would always be the one to bend, the one to break. But now, they saw they had misjudged you completely. Their attempts to reassert control only exposed their desperation. It wasn't the quiet confidence of a person in power. It was the frantic grasping of someone losing everything. The very force they had relied on to suppress you was now being turned back on them, and they had no idea how to handle it. Their power was an illusion, and once the truth was revealed, it was like watching a tower crumble under its own weight. They had power because you gave it to them, and when you took it back, their entire world began to crumble. Emerging from the flames isn't just about survival, it's about transformation. You didn't come out the same person they thought they knew. The ashes of who you were became the foundation for who you were becoming. You didn't rise to seek their approval. You rose to stand in your own truth. And in doing so, you forced them to confront a reality they couldn't handle, that they were never in control. Their confidence wasn't real. It was borrowed, stolen from your hesitation. And now that hesitation was gone. The fear they once instilled in you, it was reflected in their own eyes. They feared you, not because you sought revenge, but because you no longer needed them. Their opinions, their validation, their schemes, none of it mattered anymore. They built their empire on your silence, but your voice became the earthquake that brought it all down. You left them in the ruins of their own making, but you didn't stay to watch. This wasn't about basking in their defeat. It was about building something new, something that was entirely yours. The road ahead isn't easy. The flames didn't make you invincible. They made you aware of your strength. And now, every challenge, every obstacle is just another test of that strength. You don't seek vengeance, you seek purpose. And in finding it, you've become untouchable. They can't touch what they can't comprehend. They can't break what they can't control. The fire didn't destroy you, it revealed you. And that revelation is what they'll never recover from. Your story isn't about them, it's about you. It's about how you took the worst they could throw at you and turned it into fuel. It's about how you didn't just survive. You emerged as a force of nature they could never hope to contain. Their confidence crumbled because it was built on lies. Your confidence rose because it was forged in truth. And now, as you stand unshaken, you realize the ultimate truth. They were never your competition. They were merely your stepping stones. And as the flames fade, one thing becomes clear. You are the fire, and they are nothing but the ashes you leave behind.